All right. So we have Dylan Maitland here, and today we are going to tackle renovation or relocation. This is a classic topic between realtor and contractor. And before we get going a little bit, Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been in real estate for 13 years. I'm a third generation realtor in my family behind my grandfather and my uncle both had brokerages for 30 plus years. And my dad was in construction for 40 years. And so real estate has been fun to learn from both aspects, which is, great for us to sit here and talk about construction too.
Yeah, because we both have gone through the life cycle of seeing, for my dad, right? I've saw him retire out of the business, and then now he does real estate stuff as well, right? So it's kind of funny how you start on this and then you kind of go into a different avenue once I don't know, maybe the work load of being in people's houses while you're working, while they're living in it, kind of gets a little less exciting.
My dad is fully retired, and now he's spending all of his time gardening and traveling and fishing. But yeah, it's been a 13-year run. I started in college, and it's just been a lot of hard work up until this point. I live in Rogers. We have a family household of 3 kids.
Let's show the picture.
Yeah, show us all.
Share screen. Boom.
There we go.
There it is. Handsome fellow himself right there.
Okay.
And then we got family, my favorite.
Yep. So on the top left, we got Timber and Banff, our 100-pound Bernese Mountain Dogs. And then our Tara, my girlfriend, and our 3 kids, Sage, who's 3 months, and Afton and Liam, they're twins. They're 5 this summer. And real estate is a busy career. And then having 3 kids on top of that is equally as busy. But we're doing good. And it's a lot, but God gave me an engine to work with. So here we are.
Yeah. So before we get into our topic, I had a couple questions. So for you, right? If you've been in this for 13 years, so obviously you've been able to stay in it, because I think real estate and realtors sometimes are kind of like sparklers. They show up and then you see them all over the bulletin boards, and then they fizzle out, and then then all of a sudden they're in insurance. So tell me a little bit, why do you think you were able to kind of choose this and stick with it?
Yeah, you're totally right. I think your drop-off rate for people who first get licensed, I think it's the first year or two, 50% quit. And then it just has a compound effect after that. And then you're only left with, I think, 10% of people that make it to 5 years plus, and then you're below even that quite a bit once you hit 10 years. But it seems like once you hit the 5 to 10 year mark, then realtors, they stay around, because those first 5 years takes a lot of hard work to build up, which I think is what happens with people that bounce. They might have a year or two in real estate to go to insurance, whatever. The work behavior is very similar, but greener pastures isn't always on the next trade when the trade is somewhat similar and different. So in my business, there's been a lot of times as entrepreneurs, you have your high highs and your low lows. In my lower lows with my dad, I would have a conversation with him, because he's been doing construction for 42 years. And I'm like, Dad, how'd you do it? And his whole thing is well, you just got to stick to something if you want to be good at it. And then when you start to survey off your other opportunities, you're going to have to start over with a new skill set. Unless if you're overly passionate about it, it's going to be tough to leave what you already are good at and what you know to be done.
Yeah.
And so when I look to answer that more simply is, yes, 13 years is a long time in real estate for agents popping in and out quickly. But when I look at the tasks, the underlying business activities that realtors do, or insurance people, or even contractors, there's a lot of similarities. So the way I look at it is you're still playing in the same field. If you want to graduate the next level, you have to master these entrepreneurial requirements first, these business requirements first, before you could think that those are applicable to something else.
Yeah.
And I like real estate.
Yeah.
You can't get around it. It's the earth underneath us. It's the walls on your buildings.
Right. So
everywhere you are is real estate related. And there's a lot that in real estate that you can be doing: commercial, land, residential, and so many facets within there. So there's endless variety in real estate to be engaged in, which is very stimulating. I know for a lot of entrepreneurs that are hopping ideas and careers. Real estate is sticky in the fact that you have a lot of variety within.
Yeah.
But for me to stay the course, I think, again, came to my dad's wisdom of saying, okay, Dylan, you're having a hard season. Where else would you go that you wouldn't have to do these things over again in just a different arena?
Yeah. Right. And I think too, like, there's a part of it. So with what I do, there's a part where you can just be a really good designer. Like a lot of people, they start because they're just really good technicians, right? So you start out technician, and then you get to a point where you start like, hey, I want to start expressing myself, or you're married to somebody who wants to like design and things like that. So then you have to acquire a different skill set, but what that is actually more of a different network. And I think with the real estate stuff, or like we've helped different realtors go through homes, and then with the client, like, hey, how do we stay in this house? Or like, if we move into this house, what is it, cosmetic, or is it something that we can manage over time that really doesn't have to be done? And I think what happens is that if you don't adapt and change the people that you have around you, you can get really pigeonholed in a certain type of clientele that may not always be ready for you to serve them over and over. And I think that's something that you do really well, is because you have that construction knowledge, and then you have like the house, how it works. And then not only that, the one thing I have probably the most difficulty with is like home inspectors and the real estate agent. If I am coming in, for example, if it's going to be roofing or siding or whatever, that's one thing. But when it's an interior structural situation or something like that, because those guys, as awesome as they are not licensed in that. They're not licensed in electrical. They're not licensed in plumbing. And so then you get a homeowner that's like, oh, my inspector signed off on all this stuff. And the next thing you know, they have snakes in their basement,
Yeah.
But hi. You want to say hi? Okay.
Let's watch you guys for a minute.
All right. So anyways,
Let's see our guest here.
yeah, see our guest in my really cool office. There she is.
Hi.
It's her birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
So the most formal meetings is the type that I like to run right here. But anyways, let's get into a little bit more about the renovate or relocate, right? So when you like, I have my own perspective on this, right? But from your side, what's the most common when you get asked that question? Is it something I should stay in, or we're looking for a new house? What are the first three questions that you think are the most important that someone should be asking themselves if they find themselves in that situation?
If somebody's teetering between what they should be doing, the first thing I'm asking is, imagine the next property. What does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? And what's the cost associated with that? So there's kind of the economical questions and the why. Secondly is, if you were to actually make that move happen, would you have preferred to have stayed here? Like, do you enjoy where you live, or is it just time to go? And then three could be more or less just an open-ended question, just wondering, like, what is a deeper meaning behind this move? Is it really the house and the kitchen, or is there a bigger reason behind it? Is it because we have too many kids, or all the kids are gone? So there's different prompts. Because my objective as a realtor isn't to go in there and to sell my clients, is to advocate for them.
Yeah.
And if they're going to be making changes, I want to make sure they're making wise decisions. Because if somebody puts in a huge kitchen remodel, it's debatable if that money is going to be recouped in a short amount of time. Or is it better that we stay here long term, make modifications that we enjoy, and understand that the economics may or may not support that future resale?
Yeah.
So for me to help guide that person, I'm first trying to underlay, like, what's the reasons behind the prompt of the move. Because for some, they love where they are. They don't want to move. The house just isn't set up in such a way that's conducive for them. So then from there, I can introduce them to you to make that happen. If the economics align, fantastic. Or maybe it is time to move. It's too much house. And well, you can't make a house smaller.
Right.
So if it's really too much house, then it's time to go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of times too is that, like, when we're trying to find a solution for someone's home, a lot of times, like, in my mind, because I've seen the lifespan of that home, a lot of times I'm thinking about the return on investment with the time that you have. So you have moving, you have so much time trying to figure out a house, find where to go. Then you got the financing of it, and then after that, you got like the physical move of it, and then you have all the different things that are associated with that change. Which, in a sense, right? So that what's that lifespan typically? If someone was to buy, get ready to sell a house, and
the average person stays in their home for 7 years.
Okay, so every 7 years, you're going through that next cycle.
Yep.
And for my perspective, or like a couple that we just helped over there, is like they were at a place where they felt like all the neighborhood around them was getting younger, and they're like kind of aging out. But the thing is, like, they have a riverfront property, and then not only that, but all their kids live in a 10-mile radius. And then so that became the point, is like, was it economical to do the remodel that they wanted if they were going to resell? No, it was because he was a DIYer. He decided, instead of doing a DIY for the next 2 years or a year or 6 months, he's going to go to like the kids' baseball games, grandkids, events, and involve himself in that. And if they were to do the same type of house that they got and move, it would be, triple what he originally bought it for 20 years ago. So in my perspective with it, it's like, first and foremost is the functionality of the time that you're going to spend there. And then the next part is, like, for example, like if your knees are getting bad or something like that, that's like the next step. And then the third step for me is like, because a lot of people move up north, and then what happens in a couple, like 5 years, they realize shoveling, they have to do it themselves, or they have to get a bobcat. And then all of a sudden the maintenance of living in a place that's surrounded by forest is a lot more than if you're in a neighborhood somewhere in the suburbs.
Yeah, right.
And
they're probably away from family, so they're commuting more. And
Yep. And then the kids get older, so it's like, or they're trying to they decide they move to their cabin, and then they realize, oh, we're actually a little bit more social than we thought.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that was, I think, like, in my thought, right, is just like, how do you eliminate that anxiety and create a peaceful spot where the other things that truly matter, like you have an asset that's protecting it, and you have something that's cultivating, I think that's where, like, the relationships within it. But at the same time, though, I have been in projects and homes that we could have definitely renovated it. But for the amount of love and necessity that person needed, especially when it comes to structural things like opening doorways and stuff, not the big of a deal. But when it comes to wheelchair ramps in a split level, they need something that is more steady. Next 10 years, they can really just
splits
enjoy.
Are almost impossible for mobility.
Yeah.
Even if you had a 3-level, you could accommodate the main, or even a 2-story, you could accommodate the main in some capacities.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you look at like the longevity of the person in their house more than like the economics.
Yeah, and a part of it too is like for me, right, time's the most important asset that, like, we all have. And so I'll meet somebody like this lady we helped. She's lived in her house for, gosh, how long has she been there for? Up north, the one that we just finished. I think she's been in there for 40 years. And her husband bought it when he was 16. Oh, wow. It's a split level. There's no primary suite or like full bathroom on the first level.
No.
And her husband, for the last 28 years, has been remodeling 2 bathrooms. And so when I got in there, I was like, all right, this lady might need this is quite a big house. It's like 4 bedrooms upstairs. The main floor is just one giant living walk-in entryway area with a kitchen. And then like, going through there, I was like, hey, how can we best serve you? Can we put, a bathroom in the main level? Can we do an addition for you? And she knew the investment that she had in there. And what she told me is like, just finish the job my husband started, so I don't have to remember that he didn't finish this because he passed away. And so then every day she'd wake up with an unfinished 2 bathrooms upstairs and a third that was partially finished. So, but that, in my opinion, right, that would have been a real, like, if she didn't love that location of that property, that's such a great opportunity for someone to move, and all that time and energy spent that, like, reliving that space could have been, like, helped transferred in a different way for her. But of course, like, I'm not making someone's decision for them, but that was like the way I thought. And then we did her bathrooms. She's like, oh, I want to be here forever. I'm like, okay. Like, I thought we were going to do the bathrooms and then she was going to dip, style because she finally felt comfortable giving that to somebody else. But does that make sense?
No, it does.
Yeah.
So like your original question was like one at a time
Yeah.
to consider. And I think unless if again you're really, really belong to that home,
Mm-hmm.
then it's likely it's just time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just trying to find creative ways on how to stay here, the economics can support, and then there's the intangibles, right? Like your desire to be there, et cetera. Because if you go sell, you're going to have costs. You're going to have moving costs, you're going to have closing costs, you're going to have realtor fees, you're going to have to make some improvements regardless to get the home ready. So you're going to have inherent costs if you're staying or going.
Mm-hmm.
So now is there a point in time where if you're making accommodations to your house for your needs,
Mm-hmm.
you're not so much fixed on, oh, am I going to get this back on the resale as much as like, well, I'm saving the expense of moving right now to stay where I am.
Yeah.
And the property is going to continue to appreciate,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to enjoy where I am long term.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing too for like a real estate investor. If I to put on my real estate investor hat, you either make money on quick turns quick, like flipping a house,
Yeah.
or holding a property long term.
Mm-hmm.
And the same is true for homeowners. If
Yeah.
you have a home that's in
Just get an
disarray,
idea.
if you were to make some improvements to get it ready to sell quick,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's fresh carpet, paint, etc.
Yeah.
Those are quick ROI rewards now, as
Yeah.
opposed to leaving it dirty and etc. And then the other equation is, okay, if I'm going to go put an addition to the home, if I go resell it the next season, I'm not going to get the money I put into it.
Mm-hmm.
But in 10 years from now, the property will appreciate
Right.
and then eventually cover what my renovation cost would be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the best things I've heard for like practical use language was if you imagine your house like you're in your house for the next 10 years, if you're to put $10,000 or $15,000 back into that home in some value, not necessarily like, for example, $10,000 worth of work, but something that equivalates that value. So if it's flooring or carpet or painting throughout that time frame, then you don't have to do a $200,000 remodel,
Right.
because you're adjusting and making it yours as you go. A lot of times when I'm doing the really large remodels is because they literally haven't updated anything in the home, and then you have the electrical codes and things like that really can come at one time. So I think it's one of those things is like, do you, in your family situation, are you looking at the pros and cons list and just looking at it from a non-emotional standpoint? But then you have to feel the emotion because it's your biggest investment typically that you've made,
Right.
outside of, taking care of your family. But I think that's like a really good perspective though, from like outside of my standpoint, because we get the question, how much money is too much money in the Elk River area to put into a house? Such a great, terrible question. Because like on one side of it, right? Like if I was to ask you that for your house that you live in Rogers, right?
Yeah.
How long have you lived there for?
4 years
4 years. Okay, so you buy it like right after COVID,
during COVID.
during COVID,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you that question. What would your answer be? Like, how much money do you think you could spend into your house and still have a return if you're going to update or change anything?
Well, it's funny you say that because that's always a conversation in our household.
Yeah.
And as far as my house goes, like it's already got like a 4-season addition onto it and a deck, and we put a fence in. So those are like the larger ticket items.
Mm-hmm.
Now for us to make addition, and the kitchen's already been remodeled
Yeah.
prior to us buying it. So for us to make improvements that's financially sound to stay more long term, like our home is fortunately in a situation, so we're just making cosmetic improvements.
Yeah.
So for ours, it'd be a disqualifier for wanting to do big improvements.
Yeah.
We did the last big improvement in our house was redoing the master bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there isn't too much more that I can do with the house besides those cosmetic improvements.
Yeah.
And then from there, like we're looking at doing like a water filtration, water softener system. So there's components we can add into the home.
Yeah.
But that's not going to really carry like ROI as much as like we just want better water.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to make that investment, and in the future, the next buyer will see value in it.
Yeah.
They're not going to pay dollar for dollar
Right.
what I put into it, but there's an intangible value there to the property.
Yeah. And so it's funny because like, so that same question, but now pretend that you moved there another 14 years ago, right?
Before the improvements?
Before the improvements were made.
Yeah. So on that note, I would really have to weigh how long do I want to be here, because at that point in time to make those improvements are not worth the resale today.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'd have to look, okay, 5-10 years from now, are we in a neighborhood where other homes are going to experience the same thing that we are? Could we justify in 5-10 years if the neighborhood makes those larger improvements,
Yeah.
or we're going to catch up? Because in our neighborhood, it was built in 1998, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It was before decks and additions were put on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at how my neighborhood the past 30 years has progressed. People have added fences and decks and patios and redone their kitchens.
Yeah.
So I think when you're in to answer that question, I think the answer, generally speaking, is yes, as long as it's a long-term play.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but it's hard,
Right.
because if you're a 500 grand house and now you put 200,000 into it, how long is it going to take for everybody to catch up to
Yeah.
you?
Right.
You might not.
Right.
And that's okay if you're okay with, we enjoyed
Yeah.
the improvements.
Yeah. And like in our neighborhood that we live in, I was looking on Zillow and stuff, like looking at all the different houses that have sold in the last bit. And there's been like a mass, more or less like exodus of people, right? The older generation that's been there for 20 years are like, hey, we're going to dip out.
Mhm.
And a lot of them are actually like, it's kind of funny because a lot of them are like, what is that? Ramblers.
Yep.
So a lot of them are ramblers, or they're a 3-level split, but then they have a master suite on the first floor. But what I was looking at is like there was like one house that truly did a remodel back in the day. And then the rest of those houses now are like kind of trying to catch up to that. But that person that did it first is going to have a great return on like their time and energy, and then also because all the things that they wanted were done.
Yeah.
So therefore, they're going to stay, and they were able to do it at a time that made sense for them. Versus like the neighbor that's across the street, like 3 houses down. I just saw like a sign, and I was like looking at. I was like a little nosy. I was like, hey, I wonder what's going on. So they're going to be doing like an addition on a 2-story addition on the side of their house, but they've I'll say it this way, is like where their families at, or like what I've talked to different neighbors, like, oh, they're like doing this so that they can stay, but then their kids are going to move out. So now they have, they're making 2 bedrooms and then a larger kitchen, whatever, and then they're going to have 2 extra bedrooms here in the next 3-4 years. So it's kind of like a weird timing thing that maybe in that case, you're looking at like to renovate or relocate. I'm like, man, that might have been a decent one to like dish out, like, and head out.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there's a point in time too where like, are you over improving the house size relative to the neighbor's capacity?
Yeah.
Because if you're in let's say your average neighborhood, let's say you're in a neighborhood of 400 grand, and then you dump again 200,000 into it.
Yeah, which you will do.
Yeah,
with me, that's fine.
Yeah, you're not going to have any comparables that are going to hit nearly a $600,000. You might have them around 5.
Yeah.
So then if you consider, all right, if mine's worth 4, by the time I put my improvements in, I'm now at 6. Could I just buy something for 600 grand that's going to meet most of my needs now, or come close to it?
But you'll probably have to drive another 20 minutes in order to get it. But
Yeah.
could, relatively.
Or you could also look at it like, okay, so maybe we can afford it, and we can go to $700,000-$800,000 property, and now we're in a neighborhood that supports it. Yes, it's way more than our original budget, but we're in a position where we actually have exceeded our needs.
Yeah.
But we're now in a development or neighborhood that supports the value, versus we've over improved in a lesser neighborhood, and now we just know we're going to have to be there for 20 years to recoup it.
Yeah, and also,
the in-between's a tough area to be.
Yeah, that the other thing, I was talking to the mortgage lender guy, Dan, right?
Yeah,
Smart.
Dan.
Like, man, he loves this conversation because he either a renovation loan or a new home, like a new homeowner loan. He's like, man, the return on the investment really happens in the magic of like the family situation. Because a lot of times he's like, it's such a beautiful thing for people to celebrate their success in selling and get to that after that 7-year mark or whatever, get to that next home with, well, now it's a higher interest rate typically, or equal to, but at the same time, I think it's that the value of the home is like the people that are living in there, and like learning to maintain it while you're there, and learning to, just build that skill set. And so then when you do sell, you're gifting somebody something rather than, oh, I gotta get out of the house, it's a headache.
Yeah.
And
that's a tough place to be.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of times I think like some of the homeowners that I think of that we've helped the most, they're at that place where it was such a headache of something that in order for them to sell it comfortably, they they're just busy doing life and having kids and all this stuff, and then the husband's doing DIY projects, and then the grandpa comes over who's a retired contractor, half inch is this, half inch is this, and so then they're like now they're at a place where they're ready to sell.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to tell you like, hey guys, we're ready to do this. Like my house is worth 600,000. I bought it for 300. Let's go. And then the reality sets in. Is like a lot of people don't want to hire somebody right when they move in. They just want to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that if I could be like renovate versus relocate, it's like beyond the family situations and like the time investment is like hiring out because you want your time back is like,
yeah,
unless you really enjoy those things.
I think the market does respond to people that do improve their properties correctly the right way. Because if you're doing DIY jobs and you're not the best craftsman, buyers pick that apart and they get suspicious about what else did they do wrong. And they start thinking about potential mechanical, plumbing, electrical issues. It really freaks them out. So then you put all this time into DIY it yourself, and you got to be really critical with your own craft.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not a finisher. I know it. I'm more of a demo guy.
Yeah.
Demo guy, definitely demo guy.
Yeah.
But to lay trim a certain way and about your joints, if you don't do it the right way, buyers are going to pick up on it. So you got to be ultra critical about your own abilities. Otherwise, it's worth hiring out. And the market responds. And what I mean by that is if you do it right, you do it very, very well, there's a good chance you're going to get multiple offers on the property and the price is going to go up, as opposed to not doing it right. And now you're not getting the price you wanted and actually selling underneath it. So and I think the same is always true where and we can get more in detail about this, that there are certain things that if you over improve in a short amount of time, you're not going to get your return on, likely in addition. But if you're doing like cosmetic improvements, like those are where your value adds come in quickly on a short amount of time. But yeah, if you're able to work the family as a unit, to look at this piece of real estate differently than just an economical box, a square footage price. I think that's where the magic you can present is to say, per the family situation, we can make this work. But also from the realtor's perspective is, okay, how much time do we now need to stay here and manage property correctly? So you get back your return on investment. Because if after 2 years you put 200 grand into your house, your return on your investment is going to be how the family operates until the market appreciates to meet your threshold. And that's what can be, I think, a lot of debates, realtors and contractors. Is a contractor can go in and say, you've put 100 grand in your basement, you're going to get it out. And then I come back and say, you're only going to get 50, 60 more grand of value because we have other homes here with finished basements. As opposed to what degree did you finish your basement or over improve it to your specifications? And
I think that's why the third party of a mortgage lender is so important, because like you can do that 100 grand basement, and depending on how you finance that thing, it's really like some people, like I know that we've worked with, it adds to their like mortgage very little, or sometimes it's a decent chunk, but then it's like also there's like there's different benefits to that. But I think that's one of the things that people don't always think about is like, if you are financing and you're not paying it all up front, you didn't get a cash out or whatever from whatever you're working on, but it's like that the investment that you do today is like I wish there's a better way to do it, is like, even if you're going to move or not, is like the timing on those things a lot of times is just doing it. Because the longer you wait on the decision, the more further away you either get from experiencing loving your home or experiencing loving the new home that you could have had. And you end up stuck, and professionals like us are trying to help you like find a way to help you be unstuck. And it's the hardest thing to do, is work with someone that's really undecisive.
And if you're in a house that's distressed, time will erode the property. It'll depreciate it way faster. Or if you're in limbo, if you should do this remodel over the course of 2 years and you finally pull the trigger, your cost is going to be up 20%. I've never seen things get cheaper over time.
No, never. Never.
To touch a little bit about the financing piece. So remember the equation I sent of like, let's say you have a house, unfinished basement, you finish it for resale purposes and the value is not supported on the resale unless if you have it more long term. That's because when a bank or an appraisal comes out there and values a property, they're looking at it from a resale perspective, as opposed to, let's say the house is 400 grand and you figure it's going to be $80,000 to do the basement. So you would expect you could resell that real estate for 480. But if you have comps at 450, the bank and the appraiser aren't going to value more than 450. So you're negative 30 grand.
Yeah.
However, when you already own the real estate and then you finance additionally, the appraiser formula that they use, and we can verify this with Dan, is so different because now they look from a cost approach instead of a resale approach. So that's where you can be like, well, how did I get a loan after the fact for this situation? Because the appraiser has a different formula by which they operate instead of resale to a cost. And that's how new construction works. We go to build the house. Let's say it's a split entry home, unfinished basement in Zimmerman. Which we've got a development coming up if you want to do that. And that could be high 300s.
Here's this sign. You know, it's like
Or if you're building a custom home, let's say like on a couple acres in Rogers, that the $1.2 million, 1.5 for an executive 2-acre home.
Yeah.
You go to find that resale value, it's going to be 800,000-900,000.
Yeah.
That's because the cost approach on your sworn statements from a contractor is today's cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the formulation is so different.
Yeah, and I think we should, Louis, when you look at this recording, that one right there is such a good reel that like so many people haven't that.
Like I'm learning.
I know. So it's like, but that's the reality though, is like, so when it comes to,
but that's what you experience. If somebody's asking you to jump and build me a house, you give a sworn statement.
Yep.
The appraiser looks at it on a cost perspective and says, I approve. Or if you're financing a basement or kitchen remodel, you provide specs, features, sworn statement, and they say this is supportive per a cost basis.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think that it goes back to that team because realtor, right? Like if you don't have a strong professional in the, like if you're doing a mortgage thing like Rocket Mortgage or, you know, some crazy thing like that, and you don't have a professional that knows the ins and outs of that area, there's so much opportunity that's being wasted and leveraging the real facts of that situation. So like we'll help somebody that will like, oh, I'm gonna go to, you know, not that Wells Fargo's bad, but they'll be like, I'm gonna go to the guy that did our mortgage through Wells Fargo. And all of a sudden they get this really like they're so out of touch with really what's happening either in the family situation and or the property itself. So then I bring somebody like Dan in who's like, hey, here's a couple things and here's the after value. And also this is really the value that you're bringing if it's a custom thing. And then they're able to like the customer feels like, man, my time here has been worth it versus the other way. And I've seen that too with like realtors or something like that, where they're trying to get this deal together and then they're getting this guy in and then they're getting this guy in, but they're all just fast paced people and they're not taking the time to really slow down, look at what, like I said, the ROI of return on in the investment of the connection, because somebody like you has been in it for so long versus, you know, my like an uncle or aunt, like I have a family member that's like, hey, I'm a realtor now. I'm like, awesome. Who are you working with? Oh, we're doing this. But then I'm like, who are your options for mortgages? Well, we just need one option. We just need one large bank. I'm like, you're really missing out on a key part and key purpose of that network and those different lending options that can bring you so much more value and save you such a headache when it comes to closing.
Yeah, well, we see that in all of our trades, whether it be mortgage, real estate, or construction. Yeah, where you're advertised the cheapest quality as if to commoditize that service. But as you know, one contractor to the next provides a whole entirely different experience, value, and how they can actually formulate the problem that you're having into a solution that you're pleased with. Yeah. Same thing with mortgage brokers. You can go to an institution, like let's say Wells Fargo, since we're picking on Wells Fargo. Yeah. And Wells Fargo would change.
This is sponsored. The bank of
All right. Yeah. Well, like Wells Fargo, at any point in time in their quarters could change what the bank has an appetite for. So you might have financed them with a year ago and that product went fine and now could not.
Oh,
where you get a
that
mortgage
is so
broker.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hear this all the time.
And you see that in commercial too. I
Yeah.
can go to one of my commercial guys and be like, hey, I have a multifamily deal. It's a good one. Here it is. And they say, we just had our quarterly review. We don't want to buy multifamily. And then like, what do you mean? You gave me such a good opportunity last year. No, we're our portfolio for multifamily is full, but we're aggressive on warehouse and office.
Yeah.
So the banks can adjust all the time. And the better part about having a mortgage broker is they're able to shop institutions simultaneously to find the right scenario for you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we're going to pick on something like Rocket Mortgage,
Yeah.
they're about like they're kind of like Zillow in the fact that they make money based upon impressions. Yes, they do have a product to sell, but the transparency isn't there.
Yeah.
They're disconnected from the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to buy a property or improve a property, you're just not going to have a whole robust team that's malleable to what you need for your circumstance.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can go to Rocket, just find the cheapest, quickest product, fine, that's easy if you have the right product you're putting it into.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, it's going to make a big mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, and me and Ariella were just talking about this is like, so when I first like helped somebody and with my first large addition, right? The education of that person, they were educated, but they weren't invested on the education. They just knew they needed it done, and they just wanted it done well. Now it's kind of the flip side of that, where and it's still the same, but it's different in the fact that there's so much TikTok and all these different things, and you hear this clip, our clip, you hear all these different things, and you start to actually lose sight of that reality of what it means for you. So like if I was to do the same addition as I did that long ago, like that customer would be so much more educated, but they wouldn't have the wisdom of how the build is really put together, but they would have like the knowledge of like, okay, this is what kind of the process. But I think that's what's so important with the realtors is like when you have someone that has the wisdom that's coming in, not only looking at the house, but looking at the deal itself. And you're looking at like, all right, relocation time is here, but how do we make this less painful? Because everyone has had or a friend or been in that situation where they go through that real estate process and all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's just a simple transaction. Let's get going, and it's done. Is rarely the case. You only know that like the reason why you felt like that is because your real estate professional was doing their part. Because there's always some type of resistance, right? So I think that's like when I look at the relocation part is like, you can be educated through videos or whatever, but it's the relationship and the real estate professional who's protecting you and keeping that anxiety at bay so that you can really just get into that. Because the move's already stressful. You got stuff, you got kid stuff, you got, your parents' stuff, like your neighbor's stuff, like on your garage, and you're trying to figure out. So then it's like, that's when I look at like when you're relocating, it's so important to have the real estate professional like yourself with the team, and then also just a general knowledge of the actual construction part, because then when you're going into the home, the things that were not unsaid you were able to minimize them so much. Because how many times after you sold the house is like, oh, I wish I would have known that. Mm-hmm. Oh, we had hailstorm 2 years ago. I didn't know my roof was bad. And the inspector, that's what happened to us. The inspector was like, oh yeah, you have great shingles, great stuff like that. And I'm like, looking at him, I'm like, dude, the shingles are 25 years old, gone through 6 hailstorms, and I'm trying to now.
Roof is toast.
I was trying to go to my homeowner, and the people that are watching this that know the situation. I'm okay, but the thing is, I went to my homeowner, and on like closing day, I'm like, hey, like we need like this is on your insurance. This is something that should have been covered, and like they're willing. The insurance company was willing to cover it. I just needed her signature. Nothing. She's totally dipped. And then I get to my real estate professional, like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh yeah, we got that. Don't worry, she'll come back around a year, 2 years. How long have you been in the house? 3 years. Nothing from the person that sold the home. Nothing from the homeowner who we know. And it's just like the stagnant water. And I'm like, dude, like if I would have, and then the other part is because you're like Minnesota nice and we're all caring. So it's like I look back, I'm like, man, if I would have had just somebody with a little bit more tenacity in this, and then we could have been served in that way. does that make sense? And then to our real estate professional, oh, you do roofing and siding, like why does it matter to you? I'm like, well, I can still hire my company, but I had a leak that I had to fix in my garage, like, so I think that's like that, like to your credit is like it, you can do a smooth transaction, sure, but smooth transaction with wisdom on the front side and the back side to know the questions to ask only comes through time. Like there's no other way. Unfortunately, there's no other way around it.
Well, just like in your trade, like as a realtor sits, the more time, the more home sales you've had, the better equipped you are because you're dealing with all these random circumstances and you can take applicable parts and
Yeah.
you can apply it to this transaction.
Yeah.
Just like construction,
Mhm.
hey, how many times have we remodeled the bathroom? Well, hundreds of times. But it's going to take the one that made a mess out of your life to really
Yeah,
learn
dude.
how to get ahead of that on the next one. Or if you
Yeah.
open it up and you find out, oh, big discovery, you've had the experience to go back and fall. Not every bathroom remodel is the same. That's why you can't just go in there and say, oh, 10 grand or 20
Yeah.
grand. You have
Yeah,
to
I
really
would.
dissect
Yeah.
it and figure out potential threats.
Mhm.
And when you open it up, you don't want problems.
Right.
Like I think a lot of times as a realtor or a contractor, your customer wants this good flowing experience.
Mhm.
And if you provide that, one of two things happen. They're happy,
Yeah.
but then they wonder if they overpaid.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's it right there.
But what
Yeah.
doesn't happen is, let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say we had a bunch of problems getting your house closed or your kitchen remodel is a complete nightmare.
Mhm.
What ends up happening? They are really unhappy,
Yeah.
even if it's not your direct fault. And
Yeah.
they feel they really overpaid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've had some clients in my years where we've done the transaction smooth and great, and they're like, "Wow, that was great! Like you were worth the money."
Mhm.
And others where it's gone the same way,
Yeah.
and they're like, "We overpaid you because we made this was too easy for you." And then I've had situations where
Yeah.
it was a nightmare, and the
Yeah.
client is so thankful, like we could never have done this
Right.
without you.
Yeah.
And other clients, same scenario, where they're just unhappy with me and feeling
Mhm.
I should be cutting my commissions because all these problems are because of me,
Yeah.
instead of seeing it like a solution oriented.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the natural struggle of entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
business owners is you can't always please everybody, but what can you do in the skills that you've learned in the years that you've served to provide more solutions and
Mhm.
troubleshoot before you get into it, what
Yeah.
problems could arise? Because you always have people that love you
Mhm.
and are unhappy with you.
Yeah.
You always have people that felt they underpaid you and overpaid you.
Mhm.
And so that's what kind of keeps us moving. And you asked earlier, like, how do you stay in the industry for over 10 years?
Yeah.
Time over task rewards you because you become more resilient
Mhm.
and solutions oriented for problems that come
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. I think man, that's a good point. I have so much more things I want to hit on, but
Let's do this. Let's get into some grinder conversations because
yeah.
I know like a lot of times realtors and contractors don't get along.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are super ignorant and they just want to get in and get out. And the thing is with the realtor, though, I will say this. Yeah, dude.
Bring a chair.
Yeah, bring a chair. Okay, we have.
Maybe she can
We got
ask some
like
questions.
Yeah, maybe she should ask some questions. What are some of my? How about this? What is some of the most stereotypical ignorance that you see with a contractor when you come in as a realtor?
It's giving the client expectation that they're going to get a dollar for dollar reward on any project that they do. Let me give you an example because it's a hot topic as of late. Hailstorms.
Oh God.
Oh.
Yeah.
You got hail in your house. The insurance company gives you 20 grand to redo your roof.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean your home is now worth 20 grand more because the consumer doesn't see the bill for 20 grand, doesn't feel the bill for 20 grand.
Right.
All they see is, I need a good functioning roof.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the caveat though. Let's say your house is 400 grand and the roof is trash.
Yep.
The client wants that roof done.
It's a house.
If they're going to buy it for 400 grand, they want a good roof.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're going to get a quote and then discount it by $20,000.
Yep.
So that's again something where if your roof gets destroyed and your home value is $20,000 because the insurance paid for your new roof, doesn't mean your place is now worth $420,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one of the big things that has driven me nuts about contractors to get a quick sale is, oh yeah, if you put 60 grand in your basement, you'll get it back immediately.
Yeah,
And then
dude.
here to find out, like you over improved or you use the wrong selections, and then we look at a resale component, the value is not supported, which is why I like working with you, because
Yeah.
you don't give the illusion that every dollar you put in.
I mean, I do my best, but sometimes I really need that quick sale.
Yeah, yeah. So those are the things that would drive me nuts is just if a contractor comes in
Mhm.
and gives the illusion that you're going to be a dollar for dollar reward on
Yeah.
your expense. And then secondly, too, is if they're, I understand contractors, they've seen all the worst things.
Mhm.
So naturally they are suspicious in every property.
Right.
But if they're trying to play the part of an engineer and saying like, oh, all of this stuff is wrong and everything has to be redone.
Yeah.
You got to understand like this home was built 20, 30, 60 years ago. At the time of code and practice was different to today. You're right. This is out of code to today's standards.
Yeah.
But it was built correctly in the 60s
Mhm.
and it's grandfathered in as long as you don't do X, Y, Z.
Mhm.
So those are the two things that drive me nuts with contractors.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times I've been in the industry long enough to already have awareness when I'm working with a contractor like you
Mhm.
that really tries to bring value and education more than fear to acquire a sale.
Oh, that's where I was gonna get at is like I think some of the most that I've seen that has been a complete nightmare after someone sold a home is like the realtor's like, oh yeah, move in and we'll just update the kitchen right after.
Just fix it after.
Just fix it after.
No problem.
No problem. And actually you can even start demo because I have a guy that's going to be able to come in right after you. Or they have like I have a realtor friend that doesn't live in the state, right? But he offers painting, drywall, flooring, electrical, and then he also offers plumbing and HVAC. So before you move, all you gotta do is just go through him, and then he'll fix it up and sell it for you.
Okay.
And it will all be on the side.
Because he's an electrician?
Yeah, yeah. And so, anyways, but that's like I think that's one of the things is like not understanding. So for the state of Minnesota, electrical is it's a different language. It's a totally different thing, but it has to, a lot of times on projects, it has to be underneath the general contractor umbrella when it comes to insulation and all this stuff. So you get an electrician in there that's like moving stuff and they're taking out insulation in the ceiling and they're doing can lights or whatever when they first move into a house. And then they go to get it like appraised or they're trying to get the value back of like a HELOC for something. And then I get a call like, hey, this guy did all this stuff. What happened here? I'm like, well, they pulled electrical permit for this, but the rest of this never was fixed. It never was put back in the way it should have been. But it was just because of that, like, oh, I have a guy, he'll come in quick and he'll get it done. Like I hear it all the time. We're like, the last one I can think of is just went to a home. Realtor sold it was a quick sale, sold a home, family moved in. And they had stairs that just were not adequate. And so the realtor was like, oh, yeah, I got a couple quotes. It's going to be like, 10 grand to fix your stairs. I give her a quote just in I was just trying to help out. It was like 19,000 to redo
that made you look really bad.
2 things of stairs. And she's like, I cannot believe you did this. And the realtor was like, what do you mean 19,000? I'm like, dude, I told you from the beginning. I'm like, why did you get you're not the middleman. And I think that's one of the things is when, so a lot of
times, they're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to give suggestions about law or code.
Right.
We're not licensed contractors.
And you're not responsible. You're not responsible. And then same thing with the license and home inspector. They're licensed, but they're not. There's no skin in the game for them.
Liability.
There's no liability. I can't my home inspector with the frickin' roofer. Actually, I don't know if we even had a home inspector because I didn't care. Because I've gotten into so many homes.
Get a home inspection.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a home inspection.
Well, even as a contractor, you miss things.
Yeah, but my point is,
they're not the holy grail, but it's important to have an inspection so you're aware, where brings awareness around potential problems.
Yes,
doesn't allow the inspector to say you have a failed furnace. That's the better. HVAC person's, but they can say furnace doesn't look so great. Have it further evaluated.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I also think that they should have some type of legal document that will help you in an actual situation. Because they don't they give you a piece of paper oh, we saw this. They circle oh, your cabinet was hit with a chair. They circle it. Your door was nailed with someone was moving out. They circle it. But then when it comes to I don't know, foundation issues or a snake issue that they should have caught, right? What happens?
Right.
That home inspector is nowhere to be seen, not coming back. The realtor isn't in communication. So then I have a homeowner that I'm trying to help possibly finish a basement here, demoed his basement, and now like he's just stuck.
Yeah.
He's stuck with this bill.
Well, again, I think the point of the inspector should be to raise awareness. To
Yeah,
prompt
I'm gonna have to have
reflection.
someone on this
Yeah.
to nail all my questions, my home inspector.
So I'm going to throw the question back on you because
Yeah.
you asked me, what about contractors frustrates me?
Yeah.
So what about realtors in your experience has frustrated you
That's a good question.
or has made your job harder?
This is not a this isn't like, I'm not saying this because it's a what's it called, like a professional thing, because we have realtor friends that are cool. You're cool. Like there's people that are cool, right? It's more, and a part of it's my personality. I have a personality issue mainly with the realtor. Like, okay,
I mean, if you had generalized, like, here's a couple things that
yeah,
generally bug me about realtors.
okay.
That's the fact that they're posting on everything on TikTok.
Yeah. So for our area, these are things that these are things that really bother me about a realtor situation. One is when it comes to like waterproofing and foundation type stuff. And then it's like this one I come into a lot. It is like when there's a situation with waterproofing or like gutters, they're like, all you need is gutters. Gutters will fix everything. I hear that like all the time. And then I'll go there, but the people have water in the basement.
Yeah, don't mind the block separation. It's just gutters.
Yeah. So there's like things like that that you shouldn't. Or the other part is like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and this. I'm gonna give you 1,000 referrals. Oh my gosh, I finally found a contractor I can finally trust. And then like I go to 2 jobs and then I give them like, hey, this is what actually needs. So there's a guy that wants windows who called me. He's a realtor in the area. Client needs windows in order to sell their house, right? Windows are cracked. And so he's like, oh, just get the window panes and put them in. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm like, the window panes aren't the issue. It's a rotted wood underneath it. That's the issue. Like the window sills are rotted, and then underneath that, like there's no flashing. And then the problem is there's no, there's like not any house wrap on it.
Oh no.
So the realtor promised, oh, I'm gonna get them in here.
Well,
it'd be like,
well, you as a
$2,000,
contractor, it all
$2,000.
becomes systemic, and your license is liable if you replace this. It connects to that.
Yeah.
And you.
So that's my
big
biggest thing is like you're like trying to help me by selling something, and then like once when I do pull a permit for it, like I'm responsible not just for that, but it's literally whatever that touches.
Right.
They put it on you, and it's like, yeah, they might not come against my license, but what happens is that they won't let you close it up until it's handled.
Right.
So a lot of times this happens with like deck contractors, right? You take off ledger board, like realtors like, oh, we need to fix the deck. Take off the ledger board, put on a new deck. Simple, right? Well, then there's no house wrap. There's not this. You find rotted boards, and then here I am.
Or the whole side of the house.
Literally, like the house that we're working in Zimmerman right now, we took off the ledger board, and the whole side of the house is literally collapsing.
Oh no.
And then I'm like, the guy's like, oh, he actually he bought the house fairly recently, and they just told him it just needs a new deck, right?
So if I had to summarize, you're more or less like when a realtor overpromises.
Yeah, and I'm sure
or
it's the same thing with a contractor.
Or is upset that you didn't have, because I know a lot of realtors like we want a quick, cheap solution for our clients to make them happy. And again, we're not.
It doesn't do service for them long term.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't know that. But we think, oh, windows, how much can that be? Swap out a few windows. And then for you find it's a systemic problem.
Mm-hmm.
You present that bid to the client. And now, because we have set an expectation that you're quick and cheap, now it's really hindered the relationship for all parties. Now, the client has a distrust for the realtor because we didn't know what we were talking about. Well, we didn't.
Yeah.
And we made an assumption to the contractor instead of saying, I don't know what it would cost. Let's get Justin out here. I trust him to further evaluate. That's what you should do instead of, oh, it's going to be $1,000, no problem.
Yeah.
This guy will hook you up.
Yeah.
That's a big problem for you.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds kind of petty, but like when it comes down to like a family situation and then I am actively, after the people just got done moving, and then they finally move in, they get all their stuff in, and then I have to disrupt that way of life. And they have like 4 or 5 kids.
Oh yeah.
It's not fun. And then they have a dog. Every time I walk in the house, it's like, what's going on? You know what I mean?
You don't like dogs?
I love dogs. I love dogs. I just like when you're working, right, and you have
Should have had a
Sawzall.
cat, man. You got a dog.
You have a Sawzall, and then like
Yeah.
anyways, it's just some of
Disrupting
those
their
things.
lives. Yeah.
But I think the last thing I would say is, what is a question you feel like people should be asking you more? Like, or like
when they're like wanting to buy
wanting to buy a house, or like
or sell.
yeah, like what do you think is a question that if this person was to ask this, it would help open up that type of conversation and help educate them in a way?
I think it's the idea of like longevity. A lot of people they think about the now and they're not thinking, okay, like how can we buy, or what can we do here so that way long term we meet the goal of finding a place that's our home.
Yeah.
But also set this up in a way so that in the future we're being mindful about resale.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. People will buy something now for the immediate situation, not forecasting, okay, what could the next person like out of this house when I exit?
Yeah. 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 I think that's such a good question that serves not just that person, but it can help like so much headaches. Because how many times like someone's like, oh, I'm gonna buy this house, and then you go through the process and like, oh, we're actually not interested. Like it could have just been solved with a honest conversation. What's your commitment level, and what's the pain level of that?
Yeah. I mean, moving sucks. Even if it's something you want to do, you plan it, you got the whole family on. It's a lot. It's a lot. Segue here, because I know we're coming to a conclusion, but so again, a lot of realtors and contractors don't get along, and I think you and I have a really good relationship and respect for each other's trade.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, like I make an assumption here.
But
I also think something that has united us is the fact that we've also worn each other's hats.
For sure.
When flipping houses.
For sure.
Because when you're flipping a house, you have to figure, what improvements do I need to make? Can I make that I can resell this product and make a profit on? So you have to put on your realtor hat to forecast value.
Yep.
And then you have to understand, what is this actually going to cost to do?
Yeah.
What do I actually need to work on? What areas do I need to stay away from? So when you and I are individually analyzing deals, these are the things that go through our mind. And it's really funny how really quick you can shift into the other person's thought of like, oh, wow, like no wonder why my contractor gets frustrated because whatever, or, oh, no wonder why the realtor is so adamant about because. So I think for not all realtors flip homes, not all contractors flip homes, but I think that's something that has helped you and I kind of unite together. And the fact that we've had that shared, I don't know if you call it experience or pain, because flipping houses is usually painful. And also I've always felt, and I'm sure you felt the same way, that happy just to like help each other in thought about what to do here, or should I just walk away from this one? You know, hey, help me see the other side of this, so it's not biased, and I trust your judgment.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes like for me when I look at it. And of course, I'm seeing it from my perspective today. So me in the future probably might have a different answer. But I think it really comes down to like one couple things. Like for me is when people have such big egos, they can't ask for help. And that's something that I've done. And I think that's something that like flipping a house or having a customer or doing a kitchen remodel, whatever, like that gets beaten out of you so quick. And like a lot of our guys and stuff like that, because I've had the privilege of working with so many different people, but like people that have such strong egos that they can't just be wrong once, and then they do everything around it. They give every excuse. And I mean, I'm sure people have that experience with me, that, you know, it seems like that I don't do it on purpose, because sometimes you have to have certainty just to get it to the next point. Otherwise, you have an unopened house for 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, but no one wants to be responsible for it. No one wants to be reliable, you know, like have the liability of it. And I think that's like, for me, when I see a realtor or someone, like I met realtors and contract, like people that are both. And a lot of times it's like, they have a really cool online marketing presence, but when you meet them, it's shallow. And it's not like they're not doing it on purpose, but I think it's because our culture has praised that ego so hard. You know, that's funny because all their friends and family, like they think they're like they're just good at their trade, whatever. And then you meet like their customers, and their customers never give reviews online. You never hear anything about something that they've done. You just see these finished products. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, you had a customer there? Like what? You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's something that I see with, because you can sell one house a year and you can make it seem like you sold it like over and over again. You know what I mean? Like you can sell 6 houses, and the way that you market it, make it seem like you've done a lot of things for people, but in reality, you're just giving a different viewpoint on three conversions. But anyways, well, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, this was fun.
And I think it was fun. I didn't argue with you. I was like, I agree so much with you on so many things. So I'm like, damn
it. Well, okay, so I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm going to. A lot of times when I meet with people, I leave and they're like, well, like you don't like wear the persona of a realtor. Mm-hmm. And that's because when I got into real estate, I didn't first desire to be a realtor. Mm-hmm. I desired to learn business. Mm-hmm. I went to school, St. Cloud, for business finance. Mm-hmm. I've always been interested in the economical part of things, and then real estate's the physical,
right?
And then construction is very physical. Mm-hmm. So for me, I mean, I'm not probably dressed. I'm probably more dressed for your trade than I am my own.
Yeah, for sure. Today,
but yeah, but I also think like flipping homes has brought that about where because I've had experience with that, I understand what goes on with contractors. But mm-hmm. but for realtors that haven't done that, it's easy to live on the surface of, oh, look at this pretty house and whatever, and just call this guy, he'll fix your problems, and he's too expensive. It's easy to poo-poo your contractors and think they're just greedy mongrels when you actually do start flipping a house. And that's where I really learned, like, oh my gosh, well, no wonder why he couldn't do whatever. Because I went to go get a permit, and they said, no, you got to do this now. And then I went to go do that, and they said, you got to do this now. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole thing.
Yeah. That was my last one. Is probably the only thing, at least in the Elk River area, that they're really stingy about is septic compliance after 20 years or like so I think that's probably what has stopped more additions than anything, more than money, more than anything like that, is when septic compliance, when somebody told them that all they needed was just that they're like what is it? A warranty of it's usually 25 to 30 years, pretty decent. But then as soon as you move into a house, that needed to be updated. Yeah. And then sometimes they slip it in and they don't get a real thing. So when I do an addition, I need the compliance statement, and then also I need to have like proof. And so therefore I have to get somebody in for like 10 grand and like open things up and then like redistribute things. And it adds a lot of stress to it.
Well, also for you, let's say somebody
easements and stuff.
Somebody bought a house and your septic was compliant, and now you're adding bedrooms and bathrooms.
Yeah,
but they don't think about like, oh my gosh, well now my septic is now under service. I have to upgrade this, and does my current system allow an upgrade, or do I got to redo the whole thing?
That's exactly.
And now they're thinking, oh, I just need a little bit more. Whatever, it might cost me $5,000 here to find out. No, it's going to be
30, 40, 50.
Yeah.
That. Working on a deal right now with the customer. That's exactly what happened. Their homeowner, like the person moved in. Oh, move here. You got equity from your cabin. Do your big 25 by 25 addition. They move in. That was all up to date, compliant, whatever. And then it was underserviced. And then also they found roots. And then now I'm not doing anything yet because they have 60 grand worth of things to redo, and
their budget's gone.
And then the other thing is like to get a loan for a remodel versus a septic is a different deal. Like you're doing a future value versus something that they see as maintenance. But
I think you and I get along so well. There's a lot of personal value points, but I think the more comical reason why you and I get along so well is because we both have gone through a lot of the same battle wounds. And at this point in time, you don't feel sad about it. You just laugh in some kind of dark humor about the scenarios you've been through to turn properties around the right way.
Unfortunately, I'm like thinking of my team and customers.
We bond through lamenting.
I don't know. Like once we reach a certain type of like project level, right? So when I remember doing my first 150,000, then I remember doing like, you know, my first home remodel. And I remember like all the logistics of it felt good. I felt confident. I felt good. And then it took one situation or one person getting sick or one person falling, you know, and it's just crazy how everything compounds so fast. And then the best of my intentions, I'm like doing that. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot that can go into that, especially when it comes to like warranty callbacks and stuff. But well, Dylan, it was a beautiful time here. I hope
How can people find you
Yeah,
guys on
so-
social media?
I don't think Dylan's actually on Instagram, I found out.
No, I am
He's only on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Easy to find. You just Google my name, Dylan Maitland,
Yeah.
Realtor. You'll find
Yeah.
me. I'm all over Google.
All over.
All over. Yeah, you could just do a simple Google search of my
Yeah.
name. You could, if you're trying to figure out, like my website is my name. So
Yeah.
dylanmaitland.com, or you can find me on
Residential and commercial real estate.
Facebook or LinkedIn.
Yeah. Cool. Well, for us, you know where to find us. It's all good. But thank you guys for joining.